It was an evening like any other at Silver Crown, one of the most prestigious fine dining restaurants in New York. The kind of place where the chandeliers shimmered like diamonds. The silverware gleamed under candlelight, and a single dinner reservation could set you back more than a month's rent in most places. A haven for the elite where whispers of business deals and high-profile meetings danced between the tables. But tonight, something different was about to unfold, something no one in that restaurant would ever forget. At a quiet corner table, Keanu Reeves sat alone, dressed in a simple black t-shirt, worn leather jacket, and jeans. No entourage, no flashing cameras. Just a man enjoying his steak in peace. His presence was effortless. Even in a room full of celebrities and executives, he remained just another guest, calm, composed, almost invisible to those too busy looking for someone important. He wasn't here to be noticed, he never was. But sometimes fate has other plans. The atmosphere shifted when the doors swung open, and in strode Lucas Grant, 32, tech entrepreneur, self-proclaimed visionary, and in his own words, one of the most influential people on social media today, dressed in a tailored designer suit, gold watch flashing under the dim lighting, and a phone in his hand, already live streaming his arrival. Lucas had the aura of someone who expected the world to bow at his feet. Yo, what's up, guys? We're live. From Silver Crown, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, he said. Into his phone, his voice echoing through the space, breaking the intimate ambiance. Several guests turned their heads, some rolling their eyes, others intrigued by the spectacle. Lucas thrived on attention, and he knew exactly how to get it. You won't believe how hard it is to get in here, 3-month waiting list. But of course, when they heard it was me, well, they made an exception. Perks of being at the top, right? He laughed, flashing his followers a smirk before turning his attention to the Maitre d' Lucas Grant. My table's ready, right? The best one. Obviously, his words weren't a question, they were a command. The Maitre d', an older gentleman with years of experience handling demanding clientele, gave a polite nod and gestured toward a table near the grand piano, the one typically reserved for the restaurant's highest-profile guests. But as Lucas walked, setting up his perfect shot for his followers, something caught his eye. Or rather, someone. Keanu Reeves sitting there casually, cutting into his steak, completely unaware, or rather completely uninterested that a storm was brewing. Just a few feet away, Lucas paused, tilting his phone slightly. Keanu was in the background of his shot, and just like that, annoyance flickered across his face. Dude, who let this guy in? He muttered, half to himself, half to his assistant, a nervous young man trailing behind him with a second phone in hand. Sir, the Maitre d' asked, confused. Lucas scoffed, shaking his head as he lowered his phone. I mean, come on, this is a luxury restaurant. I'm trying to create content here. And I got that ruining my shot. He waved vaguely toward Keanu's table. The Maitre d' blinked. That is Mr. Reeves, sire, he's a guest. Yeah, well, he's not exactly on brand for me. You know, Lucas sighed, dramatically. I need this perfect aesthetic, and no offense, but he's throwing off the vibe. Denim jacket and Silver Crown, seriously. His assistant shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. The Maitre remained professional, though there was the faintest twitch of irritation in his expression. Lucas, oblivious or simply indifferent, turned to his live stream. Again, guys, I swear this place is supposed to be high class, but look at this. He flipped the camera toward Keanu's table, zooming in slightly. That was the moment everything changed, because within seconds the live chat exploded. Wait, is that Keanu Reeves, dude? Show some respect. Keanu is a legend. Who even are you? Keanu Reeves, Lucas Grant. Sorry, bro. Lucas's smirk wavered as he skimmed the comments, his eyes narrowing. Okay, relax, guys, I get it. You all love Keanu, cool, whatever. But let's be real, does he even know what content creation is? Does he even know who I am? He turned his attention back to the Maitre d'. Seriously, can you just move him to another table or something? Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then, from the corner of the room, the sound of a knife clinking against a plate. Keanu Reeves finally looked up for the first time since Lucas walked in. He met the young entrepreneur's gaze. There was no anger, no irritation, just a calm, knowing look that somehow carried the weight of 1,000 lessons learned. He took a slow sip of his drink, set it down, and smiled. I'm sorry, did you say something? Lucas let out a half laugh. crossing his arms. Yeah, actually. I said you're kind of ruining my shot. You wouldn't mind moving, would you? Keanu tilted his head slightly, considering the question as if it were the most profound thing he'd ever been. Asked then, with that same effortless smile, he leaned back in his chair and said, "No, that was it. No explanation, no argument, just one word." Lucas blinked, taking in her back. The live chat was going wild. Elma, he just said no. Lucas, stop embarrassing yourself, and Thisman survived the Matrix and you think you can intimidate him. Lucas's expression darkened as he glanced at his assistant, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Then, with an exasperated groan, he turned back to Keanu. "Dude, do you even know who?" "I am Keanu," raised an eyebrow, pausing for just a second before giving the most legendary response imaginable. "No, but I have a feeling I'm about to find out." And just like that, the restaurant fell silent again. Anticipation hanging in the air. If you've been paying attention, you already know this is about to get real. Tell me if you want to see what happens next. Hit the comments with a 1 right now, because trust me, you won't believe what's coming. Lucas scoffed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, his frustration growing by the second. He wasn't used to being ignored. And he sure as hell wasn't used to being dismissed. Keanu Reeves, of all people, had just shut him down in front of his entire audience. And worst of all, the chat was laughing at him. He could feel his temper rising, but he forced a smirk. "All right, man, I get it. You're trying to play it cool," Lucas said, sliding into the seat across from Keanu without invitation. He leaned forward, lowering his voice just enough to sound threatening. "But here's the thing, I'm kind of a big deal. 2 million followers, VIP status everywhere I go. This restaurant literally moved reservations around just to get me in tonight. And you're sitting here eating a steak like you're in some roadside diner. You don't belong here." Keanu took a slow sip of his drink, completely unfazed, if anything. He almost looked amused. "You're saying I don't belong," he repeated as if rolling the words around in his head. Then he smiled again. Just a small, almost imperceptible smirk. "Funny, I was thinking the same thing about you." Lucas's smirk faltered. His assistant shifted awkwardly behind him, looking anywhere but at Keanu. Thamatra, still standing a few feet away, cleared his throat as if unsure whether to intervene. The other diners by now had completely stopped eating. Every single person in the room was watching this unfold. Lucas drummed his fingers on the table, forcing out a chuckle. "Okay, man, I'll give you credit. You've got confidence. I'll even admit you were a pretty big deal, 20 years ago. But times change, people move on. These days, influence isn't about some old movies. It's about who controls the narrative online, and I control it." He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen, flipping it to Keanu. "See this?" Lucas said, grinning. 2 million followers when I post something. It spreads when I call someone out. People listen. And if I decide to tell them this place is trash or that your some washed up has been ruining my experience, guess what happens? You disappear. Keanu took his time setting down his fork. He glanced at the phone, then at Lucas, his expression unreadable. Then, with the same patience he'd had since the moment this started, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his own phone. He tapped the screen once, then he turned it toward Lucas. Lucas leaned in, and then froze. The screen displayed Keanu's verified profile, and in right there, bold and unmistakable, was the number 2. 4 million followers, 400,000 more than Lucas for the first time that night. Lucas had nothing to say. His mouth opened slightly as if trying to form a response, but no words came out. His assistant's face went pale. The chat on his live stream was exploding. People spamming, laughing emojis, calling him out, roasting him in real time. Keanu tilted his head slightly, watching Lucas struggle for words. Then, in a voice so calm, it almost felt like a challenge, he said, "You were saying." Lucas slammed his phone down on the table. This is Keanu didn't react. He simply picked up his knife and cut another piece of steak, chewing thoughtfully before speaking again. "I don't really care about numbers," he said, finally setting his utensils down. "But you seem to, so let's assume for a moment that followers really do matter. That influence is about who has more eyes on them. What does that say about you, Lucas?" Lucas gritted his teeth. "It says I'm winning." "Keanu, chuckled softly. Does it? He glanced around the room where nearly every diner was now watching Lucas with barely concealed amusement. Then he nodded toward the live stream where thousands of people were tearing Lucas apart in the comments because from where I'm sitting it looks like you're losing pretty badly. Lucas's face turned red. You think this is funny, he snapped. You think you can just sit here and embarrass me? Keanu raised an eyebrow. I didn't do anything. You walked in here. You made a scene. You pointed your camera at me, and now you're mad because the response isn't what you wanted. He shook his head. Lucas, I don't think you understand how this works. Influence isn't about controlling the narrative. It's about how people see you when you're not trying to sell them something. Lucas clenched his fists, breathing heavily through his nose. You don't get it, he muttered. This is my world now. People like me run it. You're just an old actor living off nostalgia. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet but firm. And yet here you are sitting at my table trying to convince me that you matter. Lucas shot up from his seat so fast that the chair scraped against the floor. His assistant took a step back. Screw this, Lucas spat. I don't need some washed-up movie star telling me how the world works. He whirled toward the Matra D. I want him gone right now. Either you move him, or I start posting about how this place treats its real VIPs. The Matra D gave Lucas a long measured look, then in a perfectly evident one, he said, Silver Crown reserves the right to refuse service to anyone who disrupts the dining experience of our guests. Lucas's eyes narrowed. What the hell does that mean? The Matra D smiled. Politely, it means we'd like to ask you to leave, Mr. Grant. Lucas froze. You're kidding? Not at all, the Matra said smoothly. We take great pride in our establishment, and we do not tolerate guests who harass others. Your table has already been cleared. Your bill has been settled. Please leave. Lucas's hands clenched into fists. He looked around the room, realizing that no one, not a single person, was on his side. The other guests stared, some with barely hidden smirks, others shaking their heads. You're all going to regret this, he hissed, every single one of you. Then without another word, he turned and stormed toward the exit. Keanu watched him go, expression unreadable as the doors swung shut behind Lucas. A slow ripple of applause moved through the restaurant. Keanu let out a quiet sigh and picked up his fork. Well, he murmured, that was interesting. Then without another thought, he took another bite of his steak. Lucas stormed out of Crown, his designer shoes striking the pavement hard enough to echo down the quiet Manhattan street. The humiliation burned through him like fire. He had walked into that restaurant expecting VIP treatment, a flawless evening, and another viral moment to add to his collection. Instead, he had been publicly humiliated, outclassed, and thrown out like an amateur. His assistant, still clutching both phones, hesitated near the entrance. Lucas, maybe we should shut up. Lucas snapped, snatching his phone back. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. Keanu Reeves, that smug, washed-up has-be. Lucas swiped open his social media apps, ready to take control of the narrative, before it spun completely out of his hands. His fingers flew across the screen as he began typing. Just got kicked out of Silver Crown for no reason. Apparently, if you're not some washed-up actor from the 90s, they don't want you there. What a joke. Time to expose this place and everyone in it. He hit post and immediately switched to live streaming. The screen lit up, and within seconds, thousands of people flooded in. All right, guys, let's talk about what just happened, he said, his voice still edged with fury. I went to Silver Crown tonight trying to have a great time, give you guys some exclusive content, and guess what? They threw me out. Why? Because I refused to. Let some old dude ruin my shot. The comments started rolling in fast, but instead of support, he saw something else. Wait, wasn't that Keanu Reeves, dude? You tried to kick out Keanu Reeves, LMAO, bro. You just committed social media suicide. Yeah, no one's taking your side on this one. Lucas's jaw clenched. He ignored the first wave of backlash and pushed forward. Listen, I know some of you are freaking out because it was Keanu. Or whatever. But let's be real, does anyone even care about him anymore? I mean, come on, what's the last big thing he's even done? Meanwhile, I'm out here running the industry, building real influence. I'm the future, guys. This is what the new world looks like. More comments flooded in. Nah, dude, Keanu's got more class in his pinky finger than you do in your whole career. You embarrassed yourself, bro. Just own it. Keanu is literally one of the most respected guys in Hollywood, and you just picked a fight with him, LM. Yo, Lucas's eye twitched. He refused to lose control of the situation. Okay, you know what? Fine, if you guys want to S over some old guy, that's your choice. But I'm not letting this go. Silver Crown just lost one of the biggest influencers in the game. And trust me, I've got friends in high places. I'm going to make sure this place pays for what they did. He ended the stream and immediately dialed his agent Milo. We need to talk now. Back in the restaurant, the atmosphere had returned to normal, though. There was still a faint buzz in the air, the kind of excitement that lingers after witnessing something unforgettable. Keanu Reeves sat quietly at his table finishing his meal, as if nothing had happened. The matra approached, standing with the quiet respect of someone who understood the weight of the moment. Mr. Reeves, I just wanted to personally apologize for the disturbance, he said softly. Keanu waved a hand dismissively. No need. You handled it well. The matra D hesitated before speaking again. If I may say, sir, it's rare to see someone handle a situation like that with such patience. Most people would have escalated it. Keanu chuckled, setting down his glass. Most people would have thought it was worth escalating. But at the end of the day, what did I really lose? A few minutes of peace. The matra smiled. But before he could respond, a young waiter rushed up holding a phone. Sir, you need to see this. He turned the screen toward Keanu. It was Lucas's live stream, the one he had ended minutes ago, but the damage was already done. Keanu glanced at the scrolling comment inside. Oh boy, Lucas sat in the back seat of his private car, gripping his phone so tightly, his knuckles turned white. His agent Milo was on speakerphone. Lucas. What the hell? Did you do? What do you mean I defended myself? No. You picked a fight with Keanu Reeves and made yourself look like an entitled brat. The internet is tearing you apart, Lucas sneered. Please, this will blow over in a day. People have short attention spans. Milo sighed heavily. Not this time. You're trending, Lucas, and not in a good way. Lucas scrolled through his feed. Lucas Grantis over party respect. Keanu Silver Crown legend. Every major platform was flooded with memes, reaction videos, and people dragging him through the mud. Even celebrities were chiming in, actors, musicians, and other influencers mocking his tantrum. His stomach sank. Then the emails started rolling in, one after another. Lucas, due to recent controversy, we are reconsidering our partnership. At this time, we've decided to pause your campaign indefinitely. Unfortunately, we will no longer be able to proceed with our collaboration. Sponsorships, brand deals gone. Lucas's heart pounded. This wasn't supposed to happen. Milo, fix this. Call my PR team. Call the brands. We can spin this bin. What the fact that you threw a tantrum over a table? I was standing up for myself. No, Lucas. You were standing up for your ego for the first time that night. Reality began to sink in. Lucas had lost control. Milo's voice turned flat. I suggest you figure out how to make this right, because if you don't, you're about to learn just how fast influence can disappear. The call disconnected. Lucas stared at his screen, his entire empire crumbling before his eyes. This wasn't just a bad night, this was the beginning of the end. Keanu leaned back in his chair, watching the video clips of Lucas ranting. He shook his head, exhaling softly. The young waiter from early approached again. Hesitant, Mr. Reeves. What should we do if he ever tries to come back? Keanu smiled, that same effortless, knowing smile. Tell him what my mother always said. He paused, then added, manners are free, but their value is priceless. Then, with the weight of an entire lesson wrapped in a single sentence, he stood, left a generous tip on the table, and walked out into the quiet New York night. Lucas sat in his penthouse apartment, staring at the screen in front of him. His once pristine social media empire was now a war zone. The backlash hadn't died down. It had intensified. His name was still trending, and not in the way he wanted. Major news outlets had picked up the story articles with headlines like, entitled, Influencer Tries to Humiliate Keanu Reeves, Instantly Regrets It. Lucas Grant's career crashes after confronting Hollywood's most beloved actor. Silver Crown stands by Keanu bans influencer for life. Lucas clenched his jaw, As he scrolled through the comments on his latest post, he had tried to ignore them, but now they were unavoidable. Imagine thinking, you could cancel Keanu Reeves, bro, sit down. This is the funniest career self-destruction I've ever seen. Lucas Isis. What happens when clout goes to your head? His brand deals were disappearing one by one. His inbox was full of cancellation notices. Companies he had worked with for years were suddenly cutting ties. Even his premium influencer network, a private group of high-level content creators, had suspended his membership indefinitely. It was a nightmare. His assistant, Ethan, stood nearby, shifting nervously. Lucas, you need to do something fast. Luke ran a hand through his hair, frustrated beyond belief. I know that, Ethan. You think I'm just sitting here doing nothing. Ethan hesitated before responding. Well, you kind of are. Lucas shot him a glare. Look, he talked to Milo, and he says there's only one way to fix this. Ethan continued. You need to apologize, Lucas groaned, leaning back in his chair. You think that's going to work? These people don't want an apology. They want blood, maybe, Ethan admitted, but if you do it right, you might be able to control the damage. Lucas exhaled sharply. He hated this. He had never apologized for anything in his life, but now, with his career hanging by a thread, he had no choice. Fine, he muttered. Set up the camera. Lucas adjusted his posture. In front of the camera, he had dimmed the lights to create a somber effect. His hair was slightly messy, not too perfect, just enough to make it seem like he'd been reflecting. He wore a plain black hoodie to make himself look humble and relatable. Ethan hit record and Lucas took a deep breath. Hey guys, he started, his voice softer than usual. I just wanted to take a moment to address what happened last night at Silver Crown. He sighed dramatically, shaking his head as if carrying the weight of the world. First off, I want to say I'm sorry. He paused, letting the words sink in. I never meant to disrespect Keanu Reeves. I was just caught up in the moment. And, sometimes when you're trying to create content, things can get a little out of hand. He leaned forward, furrowing his brow. I have nothing but respect for Keanu. I mean, come on, the guy's a legend, right? I grew up watching his movies. I never meant for things to go the way they did. He clasped his hands together. I just want to move forward from this, and I hope you guys can forgive me. I'm only human and I make mistakes. Let's all just learn from this and be better. He nodded at Ethan, signaling to cut the recording. Perfect, Lucas said, standing up. That should do it. Ethan looked uncertain. You sure you don't want to sound, I don't know, more sincere? Lucas rolled his eyes. Dude, people eat this stuff up. They love a redemption arc. Trust me, by tomorrow this will all be old news. Lucas hit upload, feeling a wave of relief, but that relief lasted less than 5 minutes because the comments were brutal. This is the most fake apology I've ever seen. Bro said, let's all just move forward, like we're the ones who embarrassed ourselves. Nah, this ain't it. Try again. Imagine apologizing without actually apologizing. And then came the worst part. People started digging up old clips of Lucas being a terrible person, clips of him belittling waitstaff, mocking fans, even talking down to his own assistant. The internet had turned on him completely. Within an hour, his apology video had more dislikes than likes. Memes flooded the timeline, mocking everything from his tone to his fake reflective hoodie. Then the final nail in the coffin. Keanu Reeves liked a tweet that said, "Manners are free, but their value is priceless." The internet exploded. Keanu hadn't even mentioned Lucas by name, but everyone knew what it meant. Lucas's reputation wasn't just damaged, it was obliterated. Keanu sat in his quiet hotel room, his phone buzzing nonstop with notifications. He had spent the day avoiding the internet, but curiosity got the best of him. He scrolled through the headlines, shaking his head. He had seen this happen before, a man blinded by ego, destroyed by his own arrogance. He didn't hate Lucas. He didn't even feel anger toward him. If anything, he felt pity. His assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Reeves just wanted to update you. Lucas Grant's apology didn't go well. Brands are still dropping him, and it looks like his influencer network has cut ties. Keanu sighed, setting his phone down. Not surprising, he said quietly. The assistant hesitated. Do you want to say anything about it? Maybe a statement? Keanu shook his head. No need, he said, leaning back in his chair. Some lessons don't need my help to be taught. He glanced at his phone one last time, the screen glowing with a notification his follow account had jumped another 200. 0000. Keanu chuckled to himself and turned off the screen. He had never cared about numbers, but it was ironic how doing nothing at all had made him more influential than Lucas could ever dream of, being as the city lights flickered outside his window. Keanu Reeves did what he always did. He let the world figure itself out, and he moved on. Lucas Grant sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights flickering through the massive glass windows, the same view he used to admire the symbol of his success, his power, his empire now felt suffocating. His phone lay on the table screen, cracked from when he had thrown it earlier. The notifications had stopped. Not because people had forgotten about him, but because he had become irrelevant just a few days ago. He had been on top of the world. Now he had lost everything. The influencer network that had once celebrated him gone. The brands that had fought to work with him pulled their contract. Even his business partners had distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with someone who had become a walking PR disaster. And worst of all, his followers were vanishing by the thousands. Every refresh of his profile showed the numbers dropping 9 million, 1.8 million, 1.7 million. The people who'd once worshipped him were now tearing him apart. In the comments, man fell off faster than a canceled Netflix show from VIP to nobody in less than a week. Impressive, maybe next time don't mess with Keanu Reeves, LOL. Lucas leaned back on the couch, rubbing his temples. The silence was unbearable. He had spent his entire career chasing noise validation, attention. Now that it was gone, all he was left with was himself, and he didn't like what he saw. Then out of nowhere his phone rang. Lucas frowned. Nobody called him anymore. He glanced at the screen. A private number. For a moment, he considered ignoring it, but something told him to pick up. He swiped the screen. Hello. A deep, familiar voice responded. Calm. Steady, Lucas, this is Keanu Reeves. Lucas froze. Of all the people in the world, why was Keanu Reeves calling him? He sat up, gripping the phone tighter. Yeah. Hey. There was a brief pause. Then Keanu spoke. I heard things aren't going well for you, Lucas. Let out a sharp laugh. That's an understatement, I know the feeling, Keanu said simply. Lucas frowned. What are you talking about? You're Keanu Reeves. You've never been canceled in your life. Keanu chuckled. Not exactly. But I've lost things before: career, opportunities, people I cared about. Everything can disappear in an instant. I know what it feels like to hit the bottom. Lucas wasn't. I also know, Keanu continued, that what happens next is what really matters. Lucas swallowed hard. And what if there's no next? What if this is it, Keanu? Let the words settle before responding. There's always a next. The question is, what do you want it to be? Lucas exhaled, running a hand down his face. He had no answer. He had spent his entire life chasing clout, wealth, and validation. Now that it was gone, he had no idea who he was without it. Why are you even calling me? Lucas asked, his voice raw. I made a fool of myself. I disrespected you. I didn't deserve this call. Keanu's voice was steady. Maybe not, but I'm making do it anyway. Lucas blinked, caught off guard. Why? Because people fall, but not everyone gets back up for the first time in days. Lucas felt something other than anger, regret, shame, and maybe, just maybe, the smallest flicker of hope. Keanu didn't offer Lucas grand solution. He didn't promise things would go back to how they were, but he did offer one thing: a choice. You can spend the next few months fighting this, trying to prove you were right, or you can actually take responsibility, not the apology. Video kind, the real kind. Lucas listened. I don't care what you do, but if you want a real future in this industry and life, you need to stop chasing followers and start focusing on who you are when nobody's watching. Lucas swallowed. And if I don't? Keanu was quiet for a moment. Then he simply said, then you'll be exactly where you are right now. Silence. Lucas stared out at the city skyline, the weight of those words pressing down on him. For the first time in a long time, he had no audience, no cameras, no filters, just himself, and the realization that he had spent years building an empire on a foundation of nothing. He had a choice to make: Continue? The path of destruction or try to rebuild? I'll think about it. Lucas finally said. Keanu let out a quiet chuckle. You do that, the call ended. And Lucas sat there staring at the phone, wondering if maybe he had just been handed a second chance. The restaurant had returned to its usual elegance. The fiasco from a few nights ago was already fading into legend, but those who had been there would never forget it. Keanu sat at his usual table, sipping a glass of wine as he scrolled through his messages. His phone had been flooded with interview requests, news outlets wanting his take on the Lucas Grant incident. He ignored them all. A young waiter approached, hesitant. Mr. Reeves, I just wanted to say what you did for Lucas was really unexpected. Most people would have let him crash and burn. Keanu looked up, smiling slightly. Most people don't realize that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can be the best thing that ever happened. The waiter nodded thoughtfully. Do you think he'll change? Keanu took another sip of wine before answering. That's up to him. Lucas Grant stood in front of his bathroom mirror, staring at his own reflection. The man looking back at him didn't seem like the same person from a week ago. The fire, the arrogance, the certainty, it was gone. For the first time in his life, he was alone. No fans hyping him up, no brands chasing him, no assistants following him around, just silence. Keanu Reeves's words still echoed in his mind. You can spend the next few months fighting this, or you can take real responsibility. He exhaled, slowly, his grip tightening around the bathroom sink. The truth hurt. He had spent years believing he was invincible, that his influence was untouchable. But in less than a week, he had learned how fast the world could turn on you when you stood on nothing but ego. Lucas had a choice to make. Would he keep fighting a losing battle, desperately clinging to the last shreds of his former life? Or would he finally admit he was wrong and start over? Lucas sat in his home studio, the same place he had recorded countless brand deals, live streams, and influencer rants. But tonight, it wasn't set up for a perfect aesthetic. No LED lights, no luxury props, no fake humility. Just him, a camera, and the truth. He hit record and took a deep breath. Hey everyone, his voice was quieter than usual. No forced excitement, no fake charm, just raw honesty. I don't know how many of you are still following me, or even care to hear what I have to say, but I realized something this past week, something I should have figured out. A long time ago, he looked directly into the lens. I messed up. He let the words settle, not just at Silver Crown, not just with Keanu Reeves, but for a long time now. I built my career on the idea that numbers meant everything, that clout was power, that the louder I was, the more important I became. He shook his head. But the truth is, influence isn't about how many people follow you, it's about what you do when no one's watching. And when I had the chance to show who I really was, I showed the worst parts of me. Lucas swallowed hard, forcing himself to continue. Keanu Reeves didn't have to call me. He didn't owe me anything, but he did, and that made me realize maybe I still have a chance to change. He sat back, exhaling. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. And honestly, maybe they shouldn't, but I know one thing: I'm done chasing empty fame. I want to start over for real this time. Lucas reached forward, hovering his finger over the delete button on his influencer account. He hesitated for a second, just a second, before pressing "It." A confirmation screen popped up. Are you sure you want to delete your account? He'd apped yes, and just like that, Lucas Grant, the influencer, was gone. He turned back to the camera, his expression lighter than it had been in days. I don't know where I go from here, but for the first time in a long time, I think I'm okay with that. He reached for the camera. Thanks for listening, and to those of you still here, maybe I'll see you again someday. The screen faded to black. The world moved on. Lucas Grant disappeared from social media, just like he said he would. But instead of fading into oblivion, something else happened. For the first time in years, he started living without a camera in his face. He took a job behind the scenes, working on marketing projects, not as a face, but as a strategist. He started mentoring younger creators, teaching them what not to do. He even applied for business school, something he had never considered before. One day, as he walked through Central Park, a man passed him and paused. Hey, aren't you Lucas Grant? Lucas tensed. He hadn't heard his "you." own name spoken like that in weeks he said carefully. The man smiled. I saw your last video. It took guts, man. Hope you're doing okay. Lucas blinked, taken a, yeah. He said for the first time, truly meaning it. I think I am. Keanu Reeves sat at a small cafe enjoying a quiet moment before a meeting. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and notification from a new account. Lucas Grant had followed him. Keanu smiled. He didn't need to respond. Some lessons speak for themselves. What a journey, Lucas went. From entitlement to rock bottom. But in the end, he made the right choice, and sometimes that's all it takes. If you made it to the end, comment yes down below. Let us know what you think. Do you believe in second chances? And hey, if you love this story, don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content, more stories of justice, redemption, and real-life lessons coming soon. Until next time, stay humble, stay kind, and remember, real influence isn't about numbers, it's about character. Like, share, and subscribe.